Good morning, everybody. So we are doing some boring on the tilt cylinder pin boards for this John Deere. They tried welding it up and die grinding it out, and got the same kind of questionable results you would expect to get. So I'm going to bore and sleeve these ones because it's just, this in particular is such a bear to get into to weld it. In between these two areas, hand welding it is absolutely impossible. You can't get in, like you can't get the right angle to weld this wall. My bore welder dislikes holes that small immensely, so we're going to bore it, sleeve it. We're going to tack weld the sleeves in so they don't walk out later. But anyway, that's what we're up to. Just making our initial pass through here. Of course, we got my home-built rig here doing the job today because these bores need to wind up at 60 millimeters, so way too small for the climax gear. So anyway, that's what we're up to. So we're taking a pretty healthy cut down in here. Thin on this side because, like I say, this was a hand die ground out hole that I've got centered back up on here. At any rate, she's cutting pretty good. We're carving our way down through there. Unfortunately, I don't have enough travel to get all the way through these all at once, so I'm going to have to do them in steps. Matter of fact, I don't have enough to even get through 2 sets of them, so it's a bummer. We'll just have to deal with that. It's a lot nicer when you do your finished pass, set your tool, cut through them all, and know they're the same, but it's got to do more measuring, just a little trickier when you got to hit the same number over at time after time. At any rate, we're carving our way through there. Show you guys this minute, and see, this is what I had greet me when I arrived, so we're just going to cut all of that right back out of there. Well, I've got that hole bored to size. I held it 4 thousandths under nominal, which is a pretty outrageous amount of press, but I really don't want these things moving. I'll end up, some of that's because I'm going to hone that hole a little bit just so it's a really nice smooth finish, and I'll probably open it up a thou or so when I do that. So then I'll probably end up honing the bore once I'm done, after I push the bushing in. Anyway, so we're boring this one now. I finally just got through all of that goobery weld in there, so that was pretty rough on tooling, but we got through it, and we're taking that one to size now. So I'm starting to think about going ahead and welding these ones. The reason I'm boring and sleeving that is it was just too hard to weld it, but I could weld those pretty easy. So thinking it over, I think there's a decent chance I end up just welding those ones. 3 holes all bored through to the dimension that they need to get sleeved at. Now I'm setting up for this. This one is kind of ugly because these holes have all kinds of weld goobers that have been added and then a bunch of die grinding. So we no longer know where the center line of these holes was, and they're not even remotely round. So I stuck my lineup cones in. Now remember, this is an angle cylinder that pins in there, this one, with a spherical bushing at the bottom. So perfect isn't necessary. I just like it close. So what I did is I'm eyeballing the bars in the radiator grill is what I'm doing with my bar, and actually shimmed on one side of my cone to get it that way. The other direction, all I've got is to sight down that column on the front of there. I just have nothing else to go with, but I'm sure we'll be close enough, but not my favorite situation. But anyways, we're about done. I'm just getting this on. I got to get a bearing mounted on the bottom, and then we're ready to go to boring this out. Alright, check out this crazy mess I got going on. So I have never bothered to build my own standalone power supply for that. I'm just running it off the base. Problem with that is it's got a cord that's a walloping 3 feet long. So in this instance, where I've got this thing mounted vertically way up in the air, that was not working for me. So I had to get inventive and build a platform out of some junk and a creeper to support the base up here. So anyways, not ideal, but we're gonna make it fly. So we're ready to get a cutting tool in here and start cutting, so that's what's next. Well, we're taking our pilot cut through here. I think I've mentioned this before, but it's worth pointing out again. When I'm running vertically like this, to keep chips out of my bottom bearing, I've got discs cut out of rubber roofing with a hole in them that's smaller than my bar, so that I have to stretch them around it. And then they just kind of ride along, slide past. Do a really good job of keeping junk from getting out of my bottom, or junk from getting into my bottom bearing that way. So helps save a lot of galling up and locking up on your bars. But anyway, we're carving. You see it's just kind of hitting some high points right now. This is a hole that was welded and then hand diagrammed out until the pin went through it, so it's pretty rough. So we're just coming through our second pass. I just got started, pretty heavy cut, and this thing was not solid enough. That's the problem with this big long spindly setup I got going on. I had to do that because my bar was going to crash down there, and I had to have my head this high in order to be able to cut this. So, not an ideal situation. It gives me way more distance between my bearings. More distance between my bearings than what I want, and just less stability in general. But anyway, added that bar. I had one, but it needed a second one. So at this point, we've got 5 plates on that thing to get it stabilized, but it's really solid now. So anyway, we're carving away on her. Alright, this is our last roughing pass. Hole is just now finally cleaning up. It was so bad out around, but we're getting there. Well, per the math and measurements, this should be the finished pass, but fairly heavy cut, 16 on a side, so I wouldn't be surprised if we're getting a little more deflection and that I end up having to make one more skim cut of like a thou on a side or so, just from past experience. But we'll see what it measures when I get punched on through there. But we're getting close to having the boring part of it licked, so that hole about done. Got to punch the bottom one, and then it's time to go back to the shop with a bunch of dimensions on a piece of paper and machine bushings to fit this thing. Alright, here's the first roughing pass on the bottom hole. Top hole was good. I cut through it on the finished pass. It was like a little bit of spring, so then I just back cut back through the hole, and then it was dead nuts on. So, at any rate, now we're cutting our way through the bottom hole. Getting close to being through it out the bottom here, and ready to back up and have another go at it. We got. So I got a little greedy, but it's doing a little chatter once in a while. But probably taking 75 on a side. I just been bumping it out by hand until I get close, so I don't really know, but something well over 50 on a side I'm cutting. So you hear her start talking every once in a while. She's doing her. She ain't liking it. Alright, well, we're just taking a skim through that bottom hole now, letting it basically take a spring cut, because I was 2 thou shy of my finished dimension, so we're seeing if a spring cut gets it or if I got to bump the tool out a bit. Anyway, we are just about done boring, ready to move back to the shop and start cutting some bushings. Good morning, everybody. So, we're back on this John Deere Dozer tilt bore repair job today, and I'm getting ready to go set up over here in the lathe and turn some parts for it. Yes, that's my chuck key hanging out in the chuck. No, the lathe isn't running. So anyways, I just went over there, that's why the chuck key's in there, and reminded myself again why I need to get the Mastiff going, because this particular hunk of tube is just a little bit too big to go through the headstock on the Legend Chipley, which is a bummer, because the way I'd like to do this is chuck it up like in the Mastiff, machine and part off spacers I go and just keep sliding out of the chuck, but I can't. And I don't want to hang this thing. I can't hang it out that far. You'd have to steady rest it. So what I'm going to do is cut off a chunk that's a little bit longer than the total length that I need. And what I'll have to do is machine my way along and part them off, and then eventually flip it around to do the last pair. It's a pain in the butt doing it that way, but anyway, just bad on me for not getting the Mastiff ready to roll yet. So anyways, we're going to get chopping and see if we can get some work done. There, quite a bit short of my final dimension. What I'm trying to do is, a lot of this tube is drawn over mandrel stuff, and it'll have a fair amount of tension and what I call skin effect in it, where if you take, say, the outside, the full dimension, and then go cut on the inside, the outside will change and won't be round on you anymore. So I always cut the skin off, both ID and OD, before I take anything to final dimension. Press fit. So I need pin diameter plus my desired clearance plus the 3/10 crush. So pin diameter is 1.964. Plus we'll say 969 will give me the clearance I want, plus 3, so 1.972. Alright, we got a good 60 to go on here yet. Take 10 and then see where we're at. right now, but it's warmed up quite a bit, so we're going to stop here. I was getting a fair amount of spring is what that means in my last pass, because I was showing that I needed to take 13, took what in theory should have been 10 and actually reduced the diameter by 12, so that's why I don't go screaming up to my finished dimension. Just cooler back off here and then see what it measures. See there, it actually shrunk undersized a little bit. We can live with that because I was actually holding my press fit a bit on the high side. Alright, now let's part these off. Alright, my GoPro battery died. So anyway, I've been busy spitting out bushings. You can see I still got to face the ends of some of these off, but I've got 3 of the 5 done now. And the last 2, this is what I was talking about, I'm going to have to machine halfway, get that one done, flip it around, machine the other end, and then part them in half. But at any rate, we're cooking right along, about to have this licked, so I'll show you the final product when we get it done, and then we'll move on to the next job. Well, everybody, there we are. 5 bushings of varying lengths. These 2 are the only 2 the same length. The rest of them all had to be various different lengths, but gonna go drop this off to the customer and head to our next job, which is putting a power feed on a Bridgeport mill. So we'll catch you guys on the next one.